This is the Iron Deep Podcast. Got a great guest, David Cowling, and today we're going to talk about the process of empowering your team. Let's go. What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Iron Deep Podcast. Got David Cowling on the podcast with me. What's going on, David?
Hey, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, super excited for this particular podcast episode. Today, we're gonna talk to David about kind of building a team, empowering a team. David is from the company Sharper Process. Good friends of mine, Gary and Susan Harper. I've worked with Sharper Process for quite a few years now, and like I said, very good friends. They know what they're doing, building out a business, building out processes with Sharper Process. But today, we're gonna really just talk about how to build a team, how to build a culture, how to empower your team, how to get them just all in with your mission and your values and what you're doing, and just how to build that family type of environment, but also keeping people accountable as well. And that's what we're going to talk to David about today. But David, let's just talk about you for a second, man. Like, who is David Cowling?
So first, I'd say I'm a Christian. I'm the husband to Brittany Cowling, and father kind of to be here coming up should be in July. So we're expecting our first, and we are very excited about it.
That is cool, man. Congratulations. That first time dad,
Thanks.
that's so cool. Any guy just bought your first house, standalone house. He had a condo before that, but that's cool.
Yeah, no, life's moving quick, and we're here for the ride. We're loving it.
That's awesome, man. Doing all these big things at once. That's cool. So people say those big things in life, having a child, moving, first house and all that. So that's cool, man. Well, today, again, guys, we're going to be talking with David about just building this team, empowering your team, building this culture, and just kind of how to build the process around that, which I'm not the best at. I'm going to raise my hand. I'm not the best at systems and processes. I'm kind of that visionary, and I struggle, honestly, in this department. I can do things good one time, but I struggle to build a system and that rhythm of the process to keep doing it again and again and again. So, David, let's just take it from the top, man. We're building a team, and why is this important? I guess, why is this important to even talk about building and empowering your team, building a process around it?
Yeah, it's a good question. With process building, right, it's essential because in order to scale and get to, you said you're a visionary, right? And I can identify with that to some extent, and there's a lot of people out there like you. In order to get and achieve that vision, right, that you have in your head, you're going to need other people on the way, right? I think of that. I know it's become pretty popular, but I think it's an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I may have misquoted it, but something along those lines. So in order to achieve your vision, right, whatever it is that you feel called to do in the world, you're going to need to bring people with you 99 times out of 100, right? So how can we get there? Well, we need to have a process for others to follow, right? So as we kind of go forward, as you start to figure it out, what you want to do is we want to go through what can be initially the pain, right? The pain of creating the process. I'm one of the weird people that enjoys it, but I understand not very many people are in that camp. But you have to build out that initial process in a couple different ways. One, you can actually build the process, you can build the procedures for it. Or two, right, you're going to hire somebody and you're going to kind of stumble through it, right? Because we bring somebody on, and it's just kind of, well, follow me around for a couple days, right? You got it, right? Don't you?
Right.
And
you ready to go?
They figure it out.
That's what I do.
Exactly. And if you're not careful, when that happens, either you're going to find somebody who's underperforming, not because they're lazy, not because they're a bad worker, but because they're not sure what your expectations are. Or you're going to find somebody who's a little bit like you and has that visionary quality. And if you don't cast the vision and present it properly to them, they're going to create their own, right? And maybe it aligns with yours, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's kind of an overlap, but not exactly. And then at that point, you're going to lose control of the direction your company and your organization is headed.
That's interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit. That, again, clearly casting the vision. and that's even a process in and of itself. And if you don't do that, someone else will. Someone's going to cast their own vision, and is maybe going to go. And I've been down both roads. I've casted great vision, and the business is going where I want it to go, and I've let someone else kind of cast their own vision, and it went somewhere where maybe it went kind of where I wanted to go, but ended up. If you get a few degrees off, you end up in somewhere you don't want to be at all, right? So define that a little bit more of what's a great way to cast a vision? How do you do that?
Casting a vision it has to come from purpose, right? It has to be real and authentic. And I know authenticity is a phrase that's used a lot today. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but we need to make sure we're being authentic in the way that we, present authenticity. All right. But it has to come from a real place. And it's something that, again, I feel very strongly the businesses that we do, they need to have a purpose, right? Because we have such an opportunity to affect change in the world. And if we're not going to do it, who is? And I know that the people that you're involved with and the people that are listening are probably of a similar mindset. So I'm preaching to the choir. But it has to come from that purpose. And it's okay to identify your purpose and to have the business work towards goals that align with that, right? At some point, not everywhere, but some businesses kind of decide that, you know what, that's what I want to do. And this is what the business needs to do. The business is just for making money, right? And the business should, in most cases, hopefully do still make money, right? But that can be for a greater purpose, right? And that greater purpose could just be to start out with, hey, I got to feed my family. I got to provide for this and take care of these needs. That's fine. But to cast the vision, it has to come from some real purpose. And ideally, it's something you feel called to do, right? In some aspect. All right. From there, we want to put some sort of measurable on that, right? Because again, with visionaries, it can be sometimes seem just kind of ethereal, right? It's out there somewhere and, it's going to be great, right? We're going to be the best fill in the blank company ever, right? And that's a goal that people can get excited about for a little while, right? But eventually it's like, well, what does that mean? How do we know we're the best? What if we're the best now? There's no measurable, there's no defined thing behind it that lets us know our progress. And sometimes visionaries can keep that pace up, even if they don't see growth because it's just kind of in their head, but most people can't. So we want to put some sort of measurable number. So here at Sharper, right, Gary's purpose, as the founder of the company, he said he wants to do a good work to support God's work, right? And he's pretty open about that. But if you've heard him speak in any sort of group setting, and even in a personal setting, you've probably at some point heard that Sharper's goal is to give away $2.6 million in the year 2026, right? And that's a big goal. We're working hard to achieve that and to be able to do that. It's something that we think about constantly, and it's kept in front of us. And maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that goal is important. Yes, it's going to be great when we give away $2.6 million to God's work, right? That's huge. That's very motivating to us. But also, that's a defined we did it or we did not, right? And that's something that's very important because, again, it's very easy, as you know, and as you live the Christian life, I'll put it on myself. If I don't say, you know what, I'm going to do this and this and this in order to grow, right? The odds of me doing those all successfully are very slim.
For sure.
Because I'll just kind of, I'm growing. I did this, I did that. And it's either a very slow growth or it's just lying to myself and I'm not really getting anywhere.
For sure. So the biggest thing is just kind of starting with your purpose and then having some measurable around it, defining what is success. Like I'm from the sports world. Again, kind of easy to measure. You're winning games, but then you break it down into small details as well. Maybe your goal is to win the championship, and that's how you've won or defined your purpose. You have to do the same thing in life and the same thing in business, whatever your goals are. So if you're listening out there, again, I think you need to cast vision and you need to start to break it down and define. It doesn't always have to be business too. We talk a lot about personal life. Like what's your vision for your faith? What's your vision for your family? What's your vision for your business? So again, start with purpose. Absolutely. And then define it. And so let's go back into the team. So number one, we start with the visionary. Visionary, sometimes it's easier for them to cast vision, but then it's very difficult for them to relay that vision onto their team, and people get confused. So let's just talk about, again, the team, and we've talked about why it's really important to build a team, because if you want to go someplace, very significant, you go together. So let's just talk about building a process around maybe you're hiring a new member and you want to bring someone in. How important it is just to have that process, and maybe you can kind of go into a little bit of the detail of what does that even look like, this process of I've hired a new person, bringing them in, and then now what? Instead of just following them around, like you just job shadow me for a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me throw in front an ideal scenario, right? Ideal scenario, and you tell me as a visionary how this would work for you. But if somebody was hired, right, and they had very few questions, right, they required, maybe 10% of the hands-on training you anticipate. They know what their expectations are, and there's a clear bar for them falling short or succeeding. All right, how would you feel about that if you could put some sort of system in place to achieve that as a visionary?
I'd feel great. Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking the bottom shelf questions.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to get to, right? So what I do, right, and what we do at Sharper is we want to make sure that visionaries can achieve those goals, right? Because we believe in business owners. We believe that there's purposes out there that need to be fulfilled, and we want to help you get there. So what we want to do and what we kind of preach and hope that other people can take, whether you use us or not, I'm not trying to make a sales pitch at all. But the content we try to deliver is we want to teach you how to build a process. So what is that? A process is, at the lowest version, is just what you do, right? So we're going to get some high level steps, kind of bullet pointed. I'm happy to show you softwares, but that's probably not a podcast thing. But we want to put together process maps, which is a visual representation of what needs to be done, right? There's a few things that does. One, it actually defines it, especially from a visionary perspective, right? You think so fast, and there's this and this and this, and you just kind of figure out how to balance it all. And in some cases, you've balanced it all by yourself for years, right? And it's just natural. It's like breathing, right? Trying to teach somebody else about that from your head is not going to go very well, right? As I'm sure you and other people listening have experienced. It's a very difficult thing to do. So once you just put it out onto the screen or onto the paper, whatever it is, that'll make huge waves of progress towards actually defining what needs to be done. That also, once it's out there, it allows you to fix things much easier, right? Because if you just say, you know what, our numbers have been down this quarter, what should we do? That is such a broad statement, right? Like, where do I even start? That's difficult. So what we want to do with the process is, as we start to break it down and get into more and more detail, and I know the visionaries listening are just cringing every time the word detail is brought up. But as we start to break it down, what that allows you to do is it allows you to make pinpoint, right, switches, right? It's just kind of adjustments here, adjustments there, instead of having to come back, everything's broken, nothing's working, and we just have to burn it all to the ground and start again.
Fire everybody.
Exactly.
Start over.
Yes. And that's a common theme. There's a lot of people out there who work very hard, but they just haven't figured out this part of it. And that's, you see, they build something, it goes up, and then it all kind of blows up, and then they go do it again because they have something they want to accomplish, right? They have that purpose, but they don't know how to fulfill it.
Amen. So having this kind of mapping, you talk about this again. I cringe a little bit. I know you use Lucid Chart and draw out maps, and we've had some people. Your company has helped us do that. Draw out this map of first you go here, this step-by-step process, and there's so many different processes within our company, right? We got the acquisitions process when we get a lead that comes in. We got the onboarding process when we get a new team member that comes in, or maybe there's a process when the team member transitions on, and there's a process when we get a deal and we have to go through the transactional, sort of thing. But again, we're really just talking about the team here and how to empower your team. And our goal is to have them, to raise our team up, to have them just be able to know what to do so you don't have to micromanage or hold their hand so much. So it's important to have this process of, bringing on a team member. Let's talk about just that continuous nurturing of the team member. And because again, you brought them on, now they're trained up, they're in their role, they're starting to build some experience and some traction with their particular role. But what are some processes and things to help them continue to empower them, to help them even become a leader in their role and to possibly lead other members of their team? Can you take us into that, just the nurturing of the team member?
Yeah, absolutely. So after you build out those initial processes, right? And obviously that's a continual thing. You keep wanting to refine them and make those adjustments, right? What next steps are, there's kind of two paths, right? And they both need to happen, but they really can't happen without each other, right? The first one is you need to document some sort of procedures, right? Your procedures and your policies. So if process is what you do, procedure is how to do it, policy is when to do it. What that does is it gives your team member the training necessary to complete that job that you just hired them for and that you have some sort of expectation for, right? That's what the policy is. The policy is, this is my expectation for your position. That clears it up. Mm-hmm. There are very few people, and I'm fortunate to not have been around. I don't think any of them. I'm sure they're out there, but there are very few people who want to come in and do a bad job, mm-hmm. right? There's just very few out there. Most people want to succeed. One of the biggest problems we see is that they don't know what success looks like. When you document the process and then the procedure and policy, that lets them know, hey, this is what winning is, right? And I was big into sports growing up as well, so I can resonate with that a lot. This is a win, this is a loss. And if you tell me I might lose sometimes, that's life, but I know then what I need to do. The other thing that we do after we document those process is that from our processes, we can actually pull our metrics, right? So the key performance and the key process indicator both come directly from your process maps. What this allows to do is then that's the target, right? Every week that does a couple things. One, again, it ties into the policies and it lets your team know this is what you're expecting, but it also gives you the security to take your hands off, mm-hmm. right? Because what I found is that, they always say there's two types of people, right? In this case, there's two types of people. One is the person who gives up way too soon without proper training, right? And they're the people who things keep blowing up and then they get more and more frustrated because, well, no one else can do this. I can't trust anybody. They're all just bad at their job. Fire everybody, do it all over again. And it's that vicious cycle, right? The other kind, and this is where I typically fall into a little more, is they don't ever let go, mm-hmm. right? They just keep doing it and keep doing it. Well, they can't do it as good as I can. They can't do it, or whatever the excuse is. What the metrics do is it allows you to see, right, in real numbers, hey, this person does a really good job. So it allows me to take my hands off and let them succeed, allow them to grow, give them a good environment where they don't feel me breathing down their neck all the time. Mm-hmm. Right. And for the opposite side, for the people who just tend to let go all the time, instead of them coming back in arbitrarily and getting frustrated and kind of seeing things not exactly how they want them, what it does is when we have those metrics, it gives you the dashboard, right? And then, we got a little warning light over here. Time for me to step back in, not as the visionary, but as the innovator, mm-hmm. right? Because now I see a problem. I'm going to go in. I'm going to fix it because that's what I'm good at. And then I'm going to leave again because I still have my metrics in place and I still can trust my team to do a good job.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I love that. So we've talked a lot about just metrics, accountability, how to know if they're doing a good or bad job, building out the scoreboard is what I kind of call it. Your KPIs and just kind of nurturing that team member and really just helps them keep accountable, keeps you accountable. They know if they're winning, they know if we're losing and drawing that out. And so let's just dive into culture, because a lot of times we have this one company and they're hard-nosed and they're keeping people accountable and people know if they're winning or losing, but then sometimes they miss the company culture. Or there's other companies, and I probably fall more into this particular category, that we celebrate, we have a lot of fun, people love being here, but we're less accountable. And, it's okay, just do it, good job, We'll do better next time. So how do we maybe shift into the company culture and still keep people accountable, but then just build that culture as well?
Great question. So once people have been trained, that's what gives you the authority to enforce metrics, right? If your people aren't properly trained, it is not fair to hold them to some arbitrary standard, right? Because they don't know how to meet that. And you haven't given them the resources. But once you have given them the resources, accountability is something that needs to happen, right? With those metrics. And what I like to emphasize every time is because in business, right, we kind of expect growth, right? That's the way the economy runs, right? We expect growth. And what we do is we start to just neglect wins, right? Like if you had, whatever sport, let's just say basketball, because the playoffs are on. If you had a team that went from winning 40 games a year to 45 to 50 to 55 to 60, right? You're getting up to some impressive territory.
Yeah.
But since it's slow growth, right? We do this in business with slow growth. It's just kind of, well, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do, right? And there's no celebration of the wins. And that goes at a company level all the way down to an individual level, right? When we find out that we have, and for you, it could be a lead manager, right? And this lead manager is absolutely killing it, right? They're so good at their job. They come, they work hard, and they have a higher than average conversion rate. They set good appointments. They do all the things they're supposed to do, and they do them well. That person often gets overlooked because there's no red light, right? Because what I like to do with key process indicator, and we don't have to get into that now, but I kind of like to set everything where good is like yellow, right? If you're going to use the stoplight version of things with red, yellow, and green, I would say that good should be yellow, right? Because I want to have a red indicator is obviously necessary, but I want to have that green indicator, right? And I can see that, man, this person, it's not that they did bad 3 times this week, right? They did awesome 3 times this week. Let's celebrate that. How can I inspire this person to do more? How can I find out what they're doing and share that with my whole team? Because then everyone gets better. And when we start to foster, right, that desire for growth, and we start to reward people, that affects the culture. It brings people up. People start to get excited. Depending on your team members, right? I'm very motivated by competition, right? I like that. So then, and obviously friendly, it's not necessarily cutthroat and all that type of thing. Again, depends on your culture, but that can be a good thing. Like, okay, so he edged me out this week. What can I do? I got to step it up. I'm going to hit a few extra calls, right? I'm going to do whatever it is to improve. And I think that's something that's so often missed, is that we have the stick ready, right? Something's going to go wrong. People usually they're ready, but we don't ever give them the carrot, right? It's always just dangling out in front and never used, never rewarded. And that is very demotivating over time.
Yeah. What would you say, a lot of real estate guys, we're in the real estate business, a lot of real estate listeners here right now, and a lot of them honestly are kind of just struggling in this season. We've had this rocky ride. Some of them are having some hope and coming out of it, and me personally as well. Our business has had kind of a bumpy ride the last 4 to 5 months, and sometimes we can really just kind of get a little bit more negative, like, man, like when are we gonna kind of get through this storm? I see hope, but it's like the storm keeps getting a little bit bigger. What would you recommend to the audience out there, that visionary, that they're going through that bumpy right now? I just talked to one of my friends, and he's kind of in that same boat. He had to let a few people go. Now the team's a lot smaller. People are leaning out. What would you say in feedback just to rile up the existing team now to continue to push forward? And yeah, what would your feedback be?
Well, that's kind of the theme of Sharper this year, right? We're coming with the rise up, right? That's something we've been pushing a lot because, as you said, you put your finger on it perfectly, right? That's something that a lot of people are feeling, especially in real estate right now. And it has to go back to purpose. Right? Why are you doing what you're doing? Right? And if you don't have a good answer to that, then why does it matter? You can do something else. You can do something safer. You can go work for somebody else, whatever it is. Right? If there's no why behind it, no purpose that's driving you forward, right? Then again, why does it matter? But I'm guessing that's not the case, right? There's a reason that you're doing what you're doing. And maybe you just need to discover what it is a little bit deeper. But if you already know that, that's got to be the motivation. Right? Because again, I'm going to be very, very Christian in my beliefs, but I believe we're each called to do something, right? And something specific. It's not just be a good person, right? And it can be different flavors for each of us, but there's something we're supposed to do. How can we achieve that, right? And take it another step closer every day, right? So if you do have a purpose, right? And once you can discover that and define that, we got to refocus And that's what's going to make it worth getting through the tougher time right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there are people coming out of it. As you just said, there are people who figured out how to navigate in real time. Right. And some of that's because they were dialed into their metrics and they had a real close pulse. So they saw the market shift as it happened. So they didn't get hurt as bad as other people, which is, that would have been great to discover, a year ago or so. But at this point, if your purpose, right, it still works, if that's something that's still worth chasing, right, then double down on it, right? Present that to the team. Because frankly, you don't want somebody on your team who's not dialed into that purpose, right? Not that they're bad people, not that everyone has to have the same thing, but if that's what the company's for, right, there's plenty of companies out there, right? If they have another one that's going to align with them better, that's going to be better for them, better for you, better for the new company they find, right? Double down on that purpose, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? If it's worth it, then you got to continue. There's no other option.
Amen. Amen. David, this is my last question of this show, and a lot of people are getting convicted right now. I believe they're listening to this and they're convicted. They're like, man, I don't know if my purpose is super clear. I don't know if I'm relaying that to the team, and they're just kind of cringing, and they know I have to do something, but kind of going through all these details and laying it all out and making the lucid chart and just all that, they're cringing at that too, because man, I just don't know if I have the skill set to actually do that or the patience to do that. So a lot of visionaries are listening to this and they don't have maybe that person on the team that can really help draw this out. So I know that's kind of what your organization really helps with, but give us some feedback on that company, this visionary. They're listening. They know they have to do something, but they just don't have the organization that can really help draw out these processes.
Yeah. So again, I don't want to just pitch, but we do. I'm happy to give away. We have some free resources, and we can give you some kind of training on this is how you can do it yourself. Obviously, that's what we do. We're more than happy to help and do a lot of that for you. But it is something that it's going to have to be done at some point, right? And you can do it now. And I'm gonna just take a leap of faith, and I'm going to believe in most of the people listening to this, right? I'll believe and put some faith in you that you're going to figure it out and that you're going to grow, right? And start to achieve your potential, right? So you can do it now and you can start to put some of those systems in place, or you can do it a few years from now when there's a lot more system and a lot more process that needs to happen. And there's frankly going to be a lot of efficiency and money lost along the way without these processes that could have been used for something great. So again, it's not that you have to do it this second. It's, you can choose. There's people that have made it decently far without this stuff, and that's great. And if you can do that, more power to you. But if you want to make the most, and in my opinion, be a good steward of what you're supposed to do, you don't have to use me. You don't have to use anybody else, but find a way to document those processes. Find a way to empower that team. Give them the framework, right, to succeed. Because if you're a visionary, you have this business, probably you think, and you're probably right. If you sat in every seat, not every seat's going to be great, but it'd be a profitable company, right? You'd make something work. Imagine if we could lay out what does it look like in each seat, and then find people that do all those things you hate doing. Right? You can only do that once we build out the roles, once you can set expectations. And then you get to help and bring so many people along the way with you and achieve that purpose together. Right? Which to me that's an extremely motivating concept for me. And that's why I'm excited to work with Sharper.
Amen. Amen. I love that answer. So do it now, or I think do it before you have to do it. I believe, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because it's no fun when you have to do it and then you're doing it, right? It's better preparing. So, David, thank you so much for being on the IronD podcast. I appreciate you. Appreciate Sharper Process and all the people at Sharper Process. Gary, Susan, hey, if you guys are listening to this, thank you so much for everything you do for our company and everybody there. So, thank you guys so much. And this is a wrap. Thanks, David.
Awesome. Thank you so much.